I had been told the firm of Drake and Scalise LLP was a blisteringly exciting place for a recent graduate to learn the noble craft of public accounting. The recruitment brochure showed smiling associates shaking hands over neat piles of ledgers. Nowhere in the trifold pamphlet was there a single sentence warning me that the senior partner was a 300-foot dragon with a fondness for conditional formatting and pelts of melted auditor. On my first day, I rode the elevator to the 92nd floor, still clutching a novelty coffee mug that read "Chart My Flow." The doors opened onto a cavernous suite that looked less like an office and more like a medieval treasury. Gold ingots were stacked where one might expect filing cabinets. Jeweled chalices served as surprisingly effective paperclip holders. And sitting atop a colossal pivot table printout that covered the carpet like an ornamental rug was Fafnir Flametongue, CPA, CFA, certified pyromaniac accountant. His wings were tucked politely behind an ergonomic chair rated for up to 6 metric tons. He wore, this is not embellishment, a green visor, the sort a 5920S bookmaker might don, and half-moon spectacles balanced on his ridged snout. Between razor-sharp claws, he pinched a no-two-pencil nod to a nub. Occasionally, as he reconciled debits and credits, a small puff of smoke escaped his nostrils, singeing the corner of an invoice just enough to require a duplicate copy. The duplicates, naturally, were billed to the client. Miss Quill, he rumbled without looking up, voice resonant enough to jiggle the coins around us. Welcome to the audit department. I trust you can make a macro breathe fire? I can try, I said. Splendid. You have been assigned to the Hoard Optimization and Accrual Reconciliation Group. HOBARG for short. He seemed inordinately pleased by that acronym. Our motto is, where there's smoke, there's deductible depreciation. Please take the workstation under the silver-plated stalactite, mind the molten lava. It still hasn't worked out the ventilation. I squeezed between mounds of rubies and nested folders, then opened my laptop. The Wi-Fi network was called SmogHub Guest, and the password, taped to a golden goblet, read DR4C0N14NG4AP. I logged in and discovered 16 emails from Fafnir, each over 20 MB, because every signature block contained a high-resolution GIF of him breathing flame across the word, regards. The gist: we were commencing the annual audit of Wyvern Works, a publicly traded potion manufacturer whose last 10K included both a going concern paragraph and an apology to shareholders who'd turned into newts. Our job was to assess internal controls, verify inventory, and if possible, avoid becoming flambéed. I tried asking my fellow associates how one audits a VAT of reverse aging elixir. They were hard to hear, all wore noise-canceling headphones tuned to lo-fi medieval lute beats to unwind/escape OSHA violations, presumably to drown out the constant roar of Fafnir's fire whenever QuickBooks crashed. Eventually, Marcus from Tax emerged from behind a pile of emeralds, whispering, Rule 1, never critique his cell shading. He's very proud of his color-coded expense classifications. Before long, Fafnir invited me to his afternoon burn-down meeting, a phrase I naively assumed was Scrum terminology. We gathered at the mouth of his lair/conference room. PowerPoint flickered on a stone wall, projected by a crystal orb that hummed with arcane energy and the occasional Windows update. Slide 1. 2023 Treasure and Spreadsheet Hoard. Growth Trajectory. He cleared his throat. The lights dimmed in terror. Colleagues, we achieved a 42% increase in gold reserves. More importantly, my spreadsheet collection is up 43% thanks to aggressive acquisitions of abandoned CSVs on the dark web. He clicked to the next slide, displaying an org chart where pivot tables sat on the same rung as sapphires and bearer bonds. Diversification, he explained, reduces audit risk and satisfies my primal lust for both liquidity and conditional subtotals. Hands went up. An intern whose lanyard still said orientation visitor asked whether storing treasure on site violated any sections of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Fafnir exhaled a thoughtful plume of smoke that curled into a question mark. Technically, no. The act addresses financial controls, not the physical location of fairly earned revenue. He winked, which for a dragon involved a shifting tectonic plate of eyelid. Slide 3 was titled Expense Reduction via Selective Incineration. A bullet point read, Shredder Maintenance, replace with fire breath. Another, Paperless Office Xless. Ashless Office. Any objections? He boomed. We shook our heads. Ash floated gently across the projector. Outside his line of sight, however, signs of trouble mounted like overdue invoices. The ratio of unscorched furniture to charred stumps was trending downward. The break room's kettle was now a crater. HR attempted to file a workplace safety complaint, but their whistleblowing form caught fire mid-paragraph and fueled itself into compliant silence. The tipping point came one Tuesday when the Public Company Oversight Council, PCOC, pronounced Peacock because regulators enjoy irony, scheduled a peer review of Drake, and Scalise. Rumors said the council was already suspicious about Fafnir's intangibles, amortized over the heat death of the universe footnote. The partners convened an emergency meeting inside the firm's largest conference cave, nicknamed the Auditorium. Senior partner Harriet Drake, descendant of the founding Drake, who'd allegedly lost a poker game to Fafnir centuries earlier, addressed us while clutching a fireproof binder. That means no treasure in the open, no roasting the auditors, and under absolutely no circumstances may anyone refer to a Form 10K as the crunchy course. Understood? Fafnir nodded in a shower of sparks. Understood, he lied. For 72 frantic hours, we conducted the most surreal cleanup in corporate history. Junior staff filed coins alphabetically, A for anvils, B for bullion. Stacked gems by color swatch and rerouted the sprinkler system to double as a foam extinguisher. Meanwhile, Fafnir locked himself in the sub-basement archive to do some light modeling. The building trembled with occasional roars that sounded suspiciously like, V, look up! Friday dawned with the faint smell of cinnamonic despair. The council's inspectors arrived in charcoal gray suits, each wielding a clipboard and a smug sense of purpose. I escorted them past a strategically placed banner reading Commitment to Transparency and Very Little Fire. They raised eyebrows at the heat-warped reception desk, but said nothing. We entered the auditorium, where Fafnir sat behind a custom desk of polished obsidian, claws folded neatly like steepled pens. There was not a single coin in sight. Even his spreadsheets were minimized into tidy taskbar icons, each marked with a benign title, like Q3 tieout _boring _final V7XX Inspector Peacock, yes, his surname matched the acronym, began, We're here to evaluate your audit quality controls. First, how does the firm ensure independence from its clients? Fafnir paused, then recited as though reading from a teleprompter invisible to mortal eyes. We maintain strict ethical walls. In fact, most walls here are 15 feet thick stone, poured in compliance with IFR 16. The inspector scribbled notes. I dared to hope we might pass. Then the PowerPoint on the wall flickered to life without human or draconic improv. A title slide appeared, Maximizing Hoard Yield via Spreadsheets, a fireside chat. Next came an embedded video. Fafnir, clearly recorded the previous night, giggling while he poured molten gold onto a stack of laptops. Look at those net present values, Melt, he cackled, the way only someone who has simultaneously discovered macros and thermonuclear fusion can cackle. The inspectors froze. Harriet Drake turned the color of unfiled tax returns. I fumbled with the remote, but the battery sizzled into sulfur. Fafnir's eyes widened as if to say, oops, wrong slideshow, but it was too late. The clip ended with him licking coins clean of circuitry and sighing, Spreadsheet soufflé delicious and deductible. Inspector Peacock cleared his throat, which somehow managed to sound both offended and intrigued. Mr. Flaytongue, do you habitually combine client data with personal assets? Fafnir's nostrils glowed like LEDs on overclocked servers. Only for segmentation analysis, he said softly. If segment alpha comprises both sapphires and short-term receivables, I can test correlation between shininess and days outstanding. It's best practice. No, Mr. Flametongue, it is not best practice. It is in fact evidence of catastrophic control failure. Peacock shut his clipboard with a snap. We are issuing a preliminary finding of nonconformity pending final review. Silence. A single ember drifted to the carpet. Fafnir inhaled. Everyone screamed at once, "Don't!" Too late. A jet of emerald flame shot across the room, reducing the clipboard and the finding to particulates. The sprinkler system kicked in, but because maintenance had replaced water with foam suppressant, pending budget approval, only a sad hiss emerged. Ceiling tiles liquefied. Inspectors dove under the conference table. Fafnir didn't stop at one exhalation. Decades of pent-up frustration with regulatory red tape erupted in a dragon-sized meltdown. He roasted printouts, flash drives, potted plants. He incinerated the entire Excel certification poster, thereby lining the air with the confetti of charred pivot table legends. Somewhere a smoke alarm beeped feebly, then melted into silence. When the blaze subsided, the room looked like the aftermath of a barbecue thrown by Nero. The inspectors crawled out, faces smudged. Peacock adjusted the molten remains of his eyeglasses and spoke with admirable composure for a man whose suit sleeve was still on fire. Drake and Scalus, he pronounced, is hereby suspended from public practice until such a time as your lead partner can refrain from flambeing documentation. Harriet Drake tried to protest but coughed instead. Ash is not OSHA-compliant air quality. The inspectors evacuated via stairwell. The elevator cables had sagged into molten fondue. Through the hole Fafnir's breath had carved in the exterior wall, we watched them flag an Uber chariot and vanish. What followed could be summarized as reputational freefall. Clients ran faster than auditors to an open bar. Wyvern Works issued a press release expressing disappointment, alarm, and mild second-degree burns. Our insurance carrier replaced their hold music with maniacal laughter and disconnected. Days later, we gathered again in the scorched auditorium. Harriet Drake addressed what remained of the staff, mostly interns, myself, and Fafnir, who reclined against a mound of slagged filing cabinets. An air of existential karaoke filled the room. Everyone wanted to sing a resignation letter, but couldn't remember the words. "We have one chance," Harriet said. "If we can deliver a flawless audit for Wyvern Works in the next 2 weeks, maybe the council will reconsider. Paula," she pointed at me, perhaps because I still had all my limbs, "you will lead field work. Mr. Flametongue will oversee, provided he promises to keep temperature below flashpoint." All eyes turned to the dragon. He lifted a claw in Boy Scout salute. "On my honor, I will try. I've installed a cooling macro." No one believed him, but no better plan emerged. Prep began immediately. I drafted an engagement letter that included, in addition to normal indemnifications, a clause labeled combustion protocols. Fafnir initialed it with a searing claw, which almost voided the protocol. We boarded a chartered stagecoach to Wyvern Works headquarters, a stone tower smelling faintly of elderberries and dividend yield. Wyvern Works CFO, an elf named Lyndon Florence, greeted us in the atrium. "Welcome, auditors. Do you require potions of fire resistance?" He glanced at Fafnir's imposing profile. "We're running a 2-for-1 special." "That won't be necessary," I bluffed. "Mr. Flametongue is practicing candle-level discipline." Fafnir smiled politely, exhaling a wisp that curled a fern. The inventory count began with minor miracles, nothing ignited. We tied out batches of invisibility serum, crossfoot petrification antidote logs, and traced cash disbursements without generating a single spark. I dared to hope. Trouble reappeared in the form of a backlogged reconciliation file, 1.2 GB of nested spreadsheets saved as do not open _Pandora.x. Wyvern Works controller admitted he'd never balanced it because the formulas bite, Fafnir volunteered. For several hours he stared at the screen, claws dancing across a dragon-sized keyboard. The workbook contained macros that beget macros, references circular enough to qualify as Ouroboros. Each time he resolved one named range, 3 nested serpents appeared. Sweatwell, molten pewter, dripped from his brow. At last he growled, "These figures are mythological," which was saying something coming from a mythological creature. He pivoted, literally, the chair had wheels rated for tectonic plates, and announced a material misstatement. Inventory was overstated by exactly the cost of one large dragon's weight in gold. All eyes narrowed toward Lyndon, the CFO. Coincidence, Lyndon cried. Market fluctuations, you know. Draconic commodities index surged. Fafnir rose, wings unfurling to their full general ledger length span. You forged adjustments to mask shrinkage, funneling the difference into shell entities whose only activity is wiring funds to offshore treasure vaults. He poked the Excel file with a claw. Here, cell A's 13. You hid it with white font on white background. Amateur. The revelation lit a strange fire in Fafnir. Not of fury, but of audit zeal. At heart, he loved two things equally: hoarding and truth in financial reporting. Seeing them pitted against each other fractured his soul like an over-leveraged derivative. He faced me, eyes molten. Miss Quill, prepare the adjusting journal entries and fetch a witness. This will be notes to financial statements history. Lyndon panicked. You wouldn't turn me in, Dragon? Think of the treasure we could share. Fafnir hesitated. You could almost hear a cash versus ethics T-count tallying inside his skull. Finally, he snorted. My treasure must be audit evidence-based. With that, he copied the incriminating workbook onto a rune-encrypted USB drive, brand, memory leech, and sealed it inside a mithril envelope. We couriered it to Inspector Peacock, who opened it cautiously with asbestos gloves. The council reconvened an emergency hearing. This time, we met in a stone amphitheater warded with dampening spells. Fafnir presented findings, quoting GAAP like a preacher quoting scripture. He displayed exhibits of Lyndon's fraudulent adjusting entries, each annotated with color-coded flames indicating severity: yellow for negligence, orange for gross negligence, and red for prepared by criminal arsonists. Peacock listened, nodding, occasionally patting a fire blanket for comfort. When Fafnir finished, the inspector spoke. You have uncovered a fraud that imperiled shareholders and, inadvertently, most amphibians affected by defective potions. For this, we commend you. He coughed. However, there remains the matter of the earlier incineration. Fafnir lowered his head. I propose community service, quarterly continuing professional education seminars on fire-safe auditing. Plus, I'll donate 1/3 of my spreadsheet hoard to the public domain. Gasps ricocheted through the amphitheater. Surrendering intellectual property was tantamount to lopping off a wing. And, he added, voice cracking like old parchment, I will adopt cloud storage. Encrypted, of course, but vapory. Peacock consulted peers. At length he declared, accepted. Drake and Scalus' suspension is lifted on probationary status. Should a single memo combust, we revoke permanently. Harriet Drake exhaled so hard, a tumbleweed of burnt post-it notes rolled by. I high-fived Marcus from tax. His hand was bandaged but functional. Favir's massive shoulders relaxed, scales clinking like coins settling into compliance. On the return trip, I sat beside him atop crates of sanitized spreadsheets, awaiting the new firm repository, Azure Drag 0 nCloud. He stared out the coach window at the sunset, its crimson waves indistinguishable from a mild exhalation of his own breath. Miss Quill, he said softly, do you think a dragon can truly change his ways? I pondered. In accounting, past performance is no guarantee of future results. But we do believe in fair value. He laughed, a rumble more purr than thunder. Fair value, yes. Perhaps I'll amortize my temper. We arrived at the office to find maintenance installing actual sprinklers, HR drafting actual policies, and IT uploading backups that did not smell of brimstone. Above reception, a new motto glowed in LED letters. Where there's smoke, there's internal control. Fafnir lumbered to his desk, opened a fresh workbook and titled it Hoard to Controlled Environment. Then, gingerly, he attached a footnote. All valuations subject to impairment by conscience. He pressed save. Nothing caught fire. For a moment, I thought I saw him smile with something like humility. Then he added one more line to the spreadsheet, formatted in shimmering gold font. Equals if ethics equals true. Treasure 0. He set the default font back to Calibri, folded his wings, and asked if I could fetch him a coffee. Black, no flames. Outside, the skyline glowed with ordinary office lights instead of dragon fire. Rumor has it that corporate audits haven't gone up in smoke since, well, not literally. Figuratively, that's beyond the scope of this engagement.